there is going to be an issue with supply, and therefore that's also going to put upward pressure on the gold price. And so you've kind of got two kind of strong forces that really indicate to me at least that the price will continue to rise. And I think you're seeing some of the big banks come out now and really harp on that as well.
Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics, and especially as we're seeing the gold price rise, getting close to $1,800, the Federal Reserve seems to have no plans to ever stop with their easing policies. Wondering if we'll see more action soon. So fortunately, to dig into the gold market today, I have Jack Lundin of Bluestone Resources. Jack, it's great to have you on here and get your perspective of what you're seeing in gold. How are you today, sir?
Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm having a blast here watching gold accelerate, especially, I think over the last 9 years, we've all watched what seems like a frustrating market at times, but it's almost as we're hitting 1,800, which is not far from the all-time high, slightly over 1,900. It feels like something historic is, especially because this isn't just a random stock. The reason that it's hitting these levels is because of all these things that have been building and going on in the world. Obviously, you have quite an incredible background in the gold market. So curious, any thoughts on what we're seeing right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, not to sound like a broken record, but I mean, you see what's going on with the coronavirus and the global pandemic and the economic fallout that has happened as a result of everybody being kind of locked down and forced to stay inside, or at least suspended from work. And what the central governments and the federal government have done is they've just gone on a spending spree or printing money like crazy. And so what that happens obviously is it devalues the currency. And so when currencies are being devalued, typically you'll see people want to put money into safe havens. So one of them being gold, and gold is a safe haven asset that, it's a hard asset that people can buy physically, or, you can invest in companies, and companies that have projects that are going to be generating good returns when the price of gold is, much lower than it is today, are going to be in a really good position when it gets up to, I think we saw 1,800 today. 1 year ago it was 1,400, and a year and a half ago it was near 1,200. So it seems like it's going to continue to climb here, and it's really good for investors to be considering getting some gold exposure, even as the gold price continues to rise, even as it is where it is today. I think that gold is just a good asset to be involved with as an investor.
Yeah, I think so. And primarily, or at least one of the big factors being, is that for me, it's hard to see any way that these central banks ever stop printing. And it's not just the US, but it's amazing how it's one bankrupt government. I mean, here the US, supposed this strong economy, it's the most indebted institution in the history of the world, except for the other governments. They're just not as big. And it's hard to see how any of the debt gets repaid or any of the money ever gets unprinted, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, kind of on the flip side of that, what we saw during this pandemic, and I mean, the pandemic is still very much alive, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon. But a lot of mines have had to curtail or suspend their production. A lot of mines in development have had to stop their development phase, and so really, you've seen kind of a crunch in the supply chain, and there's been a problem now because mines are now starting to ramp back up, but they're still missing their production, right? Those targets that they set for 2020 last year did not anticipate a pandemic like this, and so there is going to be an issue with supply, and therefore that's also going to put upward pressure on the gold price. And so you've kind of got two kind of strong forces that really indicate to me at least that the price will continue to rise. And I think you're seeing some of the big banks come out now and really harp on that as well, and show that they're also bullish. I think it was Bank of America that said they
Yep.
forecast gold to go up to $3,000 an ounce. So if that happens, I mean, the amount of projects that all of a sudden become profitable goes through the roof, and so you'll probably see a lot more gold mining companies come up and be established, and you might see a little bit more consolidation going on, and ultimately you'll see a lot of money pouring into the gold sector. It's not a big space. I mean, the two biggest companies combined market cap, so Newmont and Barrick, I think is $100 billion. You compare that to the market cap of, Microsoft, which is what I think is it close to $2 trillion. So, for those retail investors, or for those, generalists that are looking for investment opportunities, I think you'll see that there's room in the gold space to invest.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I did think that was unusual to hear Bank of America or any of the big banks mention big gold targets, especially $3,000. I know you had done a report where you looked at some of the cash flows at 1,300, and then by the time the price was 1,700, you had to redo the study. I won't even ask you to comment on what the cash flows look like with $3,000 gold. I don't want to get you in trouble. But I mean, as the price is rising in this environment, what would you say to people who, because I don't, especially with a lot of new investors to the space, I think it's hard for them to put into perspective where as this price rises, for some of these projects, especially that have a low cost of production, I mean, some of these companies are starting to make a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. And so in the Lundin Group, one of our big focuses is looking for projects that generate significant returns kind of no matter what the commodity price is, because we're in a cyclical business, right? All commodities, they go up, they go down. Gold right now is on an upward trajectory, and I think it's going to remain like that for quite a few years here. But so I'm involved with Bluestone Resources and our flagship asset, Cerro Blanco. We ran our economics at a $1,250 an ounce gold price, and so the feasibility study, when you look at the results of that, it's on a $1,250 gold price. We also run sensitivities, and we brought it up to 1,500 gold price. But a couple months ago, we were doing some marketing, and we were starting to get asked the questions. Okay, well, what does your economics look like at 1,700 gold price? And we hadn't ran those numbers because we were just thinking, okay, let's look kind of at a conservative case here, and even in the conservative case, we're getting really strong free cash flow generation once we get the project into operations. So we're in the pre-development phase right now. We're looking to get into operation towards the second half of 2022. But during that first full year of production, we're going to be generating a significant amount of free cash flow. And if you put in a $3,000 an ounce gold price, it might just break the economic model, because we're trying to be conservative, but also now it's time to be realistic. And $1,700 gold price, it gives us the opportunity to look at really doing a lot more with this company than just being a single asset producer. And so we'll really look to capitalize on that with Bluestone on looking for other opportunities once we get our flagship project up and running.
Yeah, well, I don't need to pile on homework here, but you're going to need the 1,800 number soon enough. And again, with the way a lot of the Western world invests based on momentum, I'm darn curious to see if we see one somewhere around that 1,900 to 2,000 level. If we start seeing some gaps in the price, will be fun to watch. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, last week on Eric Sprott's call, Craig Hemke on Sprott Money News, he talked about how he's encouraging companies to hold on to their production because he thinks the prices are still a bit on the low side given what's going on in the world. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a strategy you can take, but often it's not as easy as that. You don't have the storage capacity at the mine site to be able to hold the production. And so also, when you're operating in jurisdictions in Latin or South America, Central America, or really anywhere, you don't want to be sitting on a lot of product at the mine site, especially with gold if you're producing doré bars.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe you could move it off site and store it in a vault and look at the market and try and play it like that. We tend not to do that, but I mean, obviously it's an interesting approach, and it's a interesting thing to think about. If the gold price is going to be going higher and you want to wait and sell the product at when it is higher, yeah, I mean, you can hedge your bets and try and do that. But we're making some comfortable margins at today's gold
Yep.
price with some of our companies, and so we don't see the need to do that.
That makes a lot of sense. And it also seems as if we're getting some more institutional interest into the sector. Some of these financings, again, you see the stock prices going up. Curious what you've been hearing from the investors you talk to and the funds that you deal with.
Well, they're just wanting to see, when for a developer like Bluestone, when are you going to be getting into cash flow? How are you going to be financing the project? What are the economics of the project? What's the upside? And then what's next, right? So once you deliver on your word, and our word is that we're going to be developing Cerro Blanco and getting that into production, what's next? And what are you left with? What's the opportunities there? And so, as I was saying, with the free cash flow generation, we'll be using that to put it in the ground, and kind of expand the operation and look beyond that and try and see what other opportunities there are in Guatemala, in Central America, and probably keep Bluestone as America's focused company for the time being. But before getting my head too big, I just want to make sure that we can deliver on Cerro Blanco, and we've got the resources in place now. We've got a really strong team established, a team of individuals that know what it takes to build a project, and what it takes to negotiate with governments, and what it takes to get the permits needed, and engage with the community, and train the local citizens in order to create a workforce that you can then leave, and they're trained up, and it becomes a fully kind of national mine operation, and that's what we're really trying to do with Bluestone Resources in Guatemala.
Yeah, it's an interesting profile you guys have there at Bluestone. And fortunately, Jack was kind enough to stick around and give a full overview of the company, which is coming your way right here.